Are you guys anything like me in the sense that you live in what's considered to be a rich country, but you don't really feel that rich? As you'll know from watching previous videos, I live in the UK, but this goes out to anybody who live in high GDP countries. You see, the problem with these countries is they're marketed or told or sold to us as rich places, right? It's one of the richest countries in the world, the UK, or maybe the US, or maybe others around the world, right? They're very rich countries. And whilst that is to an extent the case, this is a general statistic and it is not subjective at all. And this is another way, in my opinion, that your average person gets deceived and gets robbed by the rich. Oof, it really is getting super warm this time of the year, but what I'm trying to say here is the statistic to look for isn't GDP. It's not even necessarily GDP per capita, I think, although that is a bit more interesting. I think the main statistic to look for is wealth disparity and wealth inequality. Now, maybe I will stand corrected in the comment section, but from what I've seen statistically, it's not just my opinion, in terms of rich nations, as we point them out to be, the UK is one of the more wealth unequal ones. And in day-to-day life, that is obvious when you have a look around the cities, the towns, and the people. You've got people, and this is just what I've seen on my trip today, right? You've got people who are homeless, and you've got people who drive really expensive luxury and supercars. Now, as I've outlined before on the channel, in my view, millionaires are not really rich. Again, relatively, they are very, very wealthy. But when there's billionaires out there, 1 to 10 million really is nothing at all. But the point is still true, right? There's a lot of people who do not have a thing, or don't have very much. Again, some people here don't even have houses. But that's a point that we never bring up, right? They say, oh, GDP is important, we're one of the richest countries. That wealth is very concentrated. It appears to be the case, and you can tell the difference straight away in public services. When you go outside of London, how things are dealt with. And by the way, of course that is a city full of problems of its own. I'm not saying it's perfect. It comes with even more problems in some ways because of its giant population. But what I'm saying is, the real fancy places where the financial work happens, the work that really enriches the richest and really is where all the money comes from and goes, well, these are the places that are super rich, fancy, prosperous and well-doing. It's not your average small town, right? The amount of wealth held there, it may be a lot if it's a rich town, but generally speaking, it isn't very much, right? People get this really wrong, and I don't really know how much I need to explain about this topic. I think that's really all I need to say, because if you have a walk around any of your cities, you'll see it. Yes, the streets are well paved, and there's a lot of good things, right? But you can definitely see the have-nots and have-yachts, which I think is an interesting phrase. You can see that before your eyes. It's very obvious. You don't need to be a financial expert or economist for that. But again, people don't speak about this. And I think this is another attempt at driving division really between, well, the workers and those that benefit from it, because most people do not benefit to the extent that they should from their labour. As I say, the people who benefit are the people who own the factories, own the companies and stuff like that. And by making it sound like, yeah guys, our GDP is good, it makes people think that they're richer than they really are. And whilst that can be a good thing short term, it distracts from the real point. What's happening more and more now is that we're all looking the wrong direction, and yet again, that's not going to be beneficial to us. The country's GDP, to an extent, does indicate how rich people are and how good public services may be. This stops to be the case when countries become corrupt, right? Because then, you can have as much money as you like, but it's in the hands of so very few people and has so much of a social, so little of a social benefit, it basically is irrelevant. Now, what the consequences of that is and what that means to you is basically for you to decide. I'm not out here to tell anybody what's right or wrong. As I always do say, it's just me sharing my views and my opinions and what I experience. But I do think it is increasingly the case that, rich countries, whether it be because business controls more, or the businesses that exist control more themselves, or all that sort of stuff, the power is being put into the hands of fewer and fewer people. And no matter what the statistics say, I'm not saying that they're not real, but they are not necessarily indicative of the genuine situation that most people experience and endure. They are some sort of a measure of a country's financial success and that sort of thing when we talk about GDP and the like. But is that really what we're experiencing? There's a big disparity in many Western nations, rich nations, whatever you might want to call it, and the way that is being marketed is not necessarily true to how it is. It's all something to consider if you ask me. It's just my views, but that's my opinions on this specific topic. Probably one of the more short videos, but hopefully it was insightful enough. Well, it's just my opinion really, but I didn't really have too much to say on this one. I really think this issue speaks for itself, but yet again, I don't hear many people really speaking about it at all. Bringing some light to it may have a positive impact, I hope so, and I hope at least one person can think about this in the future. That's it for this one. Thank you so much. See you soon.